Morning. A reading from 2 Kings. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to trick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elijah's house. Elijah sent a message to him saying, "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abban and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in rage. But his servants approached and said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." The word of the Lord.
One of the departed saints that comes to my mind every All Saints Sunday is my internship supervisor, Pastor Luther Johnson. Luther showed up in an All Saints slideshow many years ago. He is, among other things, the best preacher I have ever had the pleasure of listening to every week. I happen to be his last intern. And I think that's part of why Luther and his wife, Bev, chose to give me the honor of preaching at Luther's funeral. It seemed fitting to me that such an adept preacher would have a chance to preach at his own funeral. And being in a position to make that happen, I did make that happen. Luther was one of those people who wrote an annual Christmas letter, an epistle, really. And the last one he wrote, about 10 months before he died, spoke of the usual Advent themes of waiting and hoping and anticipating. And then he wrote this, which I shared in that funeral sermon. "All of this I experience in a particularly urgent way this season. For most of the last year, I have journeyed in the land of disability. We wait for the telephone message announcing my surgery appointment. Repair of the right knee for a fractured kneecap, replacement surgery was done early August, and replacement of the left knee joint during the same operation. I am profoundly blessed. Bev, after 40 years, her compassion, love, and ingenuity continue to amaze me. And our whole family surround me with love and helpfulness. Many of you who receive this rambling have found countless ways to tell us that you care and you have prayed. Thank you. Keep praying, please. And include in your thoughts and prayers the many, many others who suffer disabilities, most of whom do so much longer and more severely than I. It is a tough life, and I am glad to have been given the opportunity to see it personally. Indeed, the Spirit may enable us to see it all as part of the fellowship of Christ's suffering. And in such a fellowship of love and sharing, the promise finds a certain fulfillment of the Christmas news. Christ has come, and all things are being made new in him. I freely admit that I am not as mature or faithful as Luther was. I'm not ready to claim it is a tough life, and I am glad to have been given the opportunity to see it personally. Even though I believe that the rest of what he says is true, that the Spirit does enable us to see it all as part of the fellowship we share with Christ in his suffering, and that in that fellowship we share not only in Christ's suffering and death, but also in his resurrection, in his love, his promise, new life, that all things are indeed being made new in him. And that is, for us, what it means to be a saint. When people think of churches with lots of saints, I don't think they usually think of the Lutheran Church, right? They probably think of the Roman Catholic Church. And they have too many for me to even keep track of. And each one has their own purpose, right? Like our namesake Martin Luther, when he was still a Roman Catholic law student, he was caught in a storm while traveling, and he prayed to the patron saint of travelers, which is Saint Anne, right? It's hard to keep track of them all, but there's one for everything, even if few of us know what that is. Well, despite there being so many saints in the Roman Catholic Church that are recognized, we have more, many more. Because the Lutheran understanding is that a saint is just a forgiven sinner. A saint is one who God in Jesus has made righteous. A saint is one who has been claimed by God. A saint rests in the fellowship of Christ's sufferings. A saint relies on God for their sainthood, as well as for their place in God's kingdom. So our saints include both the living and the dead, those who have come before, those who are yet to be. When we speak of all the saints of every time and every place, we mean all those who have ever or will ever belong to God. And that is a lot of people. And they all rely on God for their position as a saint, for their position in God's family, for being included in those who have been redeemed. Not all of us appreciate this, though, right? Because most of us have a bit of Naaman in us. And that Naaman, of course, wanted to be healed, wanted desperately to be healed of that disease that kept him separated from everyone else in his society. It was so important, he was so desperate, that he was willing to travel for at least a week, probably much longer, to go visit a prophet that he had only just heard of and whose name he didn't even know. And he did this on the word of a young slave girl. Now, in that society, there was no less reliable source of information. As a female slave and child. Literally anyone else who had contradicted her would have been believed instead of her. Yet Naaman went and did so with the full blessing and backing of his king. And when Naaman finally found this prophet and was given instructions about what to do to be healed, he threw a fit. It was so important, and now he's refusing to follow through because it didn't make him look important. Because the prophet didn't come out with some grand act of shock and awe because he wanted to do something to prove himself, to prove his worth. Good thing for Naaman that his servants saw what he could not, right? So they, I have to assume, slowly and carefully approach him and gingerly suggest him that, if you had been commanded to complete some difficult task, you would have risen to the challenge, right? So does it really make sense for you not to complete this task that has been commanded of you when it's so simple? He's convinced. He goes and washes 7 times in that plain old ordinary water in the Jordan. And he's healed. His leprosy is taken from him. But not just his leprosy, right? Any opportunity for pride was taken from him. There was no heroic task to be completed, no display of shock and awe. The prophet Elisha didn't even appear himself. There was nothing that Naaman did that was in any way worth bragging about to bring about this healing. So taken from Naaman was any possibility that he had achieved his own healing, that he had somehow earned it. It was purely a gift from the God of Elisha, the God of Israel. And with Naaman's healing comes faith and gratitude. As he says when he returns and stands in front of the prophet Elijah, who is now finally willing to come out and meet him. Naaman says, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." And that's what this is all about, right? Knowing that Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the God who came to live among us as Jesus of Nazareth, knowing that God is the one true God who holds the power of death and life. That's our story. A story of suffering and healing, a story of despair and hope. A story of success that cannot heal, and humility that can make healing possible. A story of small, insignificant people who make a huge difference. A story of being washed clean in the healing waters of baptism, resulting in new life and new faith. A story of God's love and acceptance and compassion being revealed. This is our story. This is your story, and you are a part of it. You're a part of it whether you're Naaman, the successful general who is desperately aware of the limits of what success can buy, or whether you're the unnamed servant girl who is excited to share what you know about who can cure disease. You're part of this story when you are the prophet who boldly puts Naaman in his place, and when you're his nervous servants who nevertheless dare to suggest that he not let his pride ruin his chance for healing. With Naaman's healing came faith and gratitude. In his case, he attempted to give back to God by giving gifts to Elisha, that prophet, through whom his healing had come. freed of the illusion that it was his worth, his achievements, his abilities, his wealth that made him worthy and whole. Naaman sought to give back to the God who had in fact made him whole. I believe that when we are freed from that same illusion, when we learn that it is God and only God who makes us worthy and whole, that we have the same response. As I've shared with you over the last month, I also believe that our generous response in giving back to God is an integral part of our growth in faith. That as we learn to give more back to God, we also grow in our ability to trust that God does indeed provide us more than enough. It's not our own achievements, our own abilities, our own wealth that we rely on. We rely on God for all that is good. We're going to sing together in a moment. And after we do, you will have an opportunity to bring forward a financial commitment for the coming year. And this is not a requirement. This is an opportunity. Only a very small number of us here will ever see your commitment cards. They are primarily between you and God, which is why we offer you the opportunity to bring them forward and place them in the red box here at God's altar. If you happen to need a card to fill out, you can find one laying on the table by the entrance to our worship space. And grabbing one during the next song would be a great opportunity if that's one you need. I'll have a few instructions for those of you who haven't yet filled out your commitment card after we sing.